The city continues outside. Traffic. Voices. The rush of thousands of feet. But here, behind these heavy doors, time moves differently. You have found the abandoned library. Not lost. Found. As if it was waiting for you to arrive. The air is still. It smells of paper and patience. Of stories that have already been told, but remain, just in case someone needs them. You don't need to read anything. You don't need to choose a book. Simply being here is enough. The shelves rise on every side. Floor to ceiling. Ceiling to shadow. They hold more than words. They hold weight. The weight of centuries spent quietly. A single lamp burns at the center of the room. Not bright. Not dim. Exactly enough to see that you are alone. And safe. Dust floats in its beam. Slowly. So slowly you might think it has stopped. But it hasn't. It is simply in no hurry to land. You walk between the aisles. Or you don't. Standing still is also a kind of movement here. The floorboards creak softly underfoot. Not complaining. Just acknowledging your presence. Somewhere a clock ticks. Not every second. Every third or fourth. As if even time has grown lazy in this place. You find a chair. Leather. Worn smooth by decades of readers. Who sat here and drifted. Not into sleep immediately. But into that place just before sleep. Where thoughts loosen and float free. The chair accepts you. It doesn't ask why you came. It doesn't wonder when you will leave. It simply holds you. As the lamp continues to burn. As the dust continues its slow dance. As the city outside continues without you. You can close your eyes now. Or keep them open. The library doesn't mind. It has been here for 100 years. It will be here when you wake. Breathe in the quiet. Breathe out the day. Let the stories you will never read surround you anyway. Their presence is enough. Your presence is enough. The chair is warm. The air is still. And in this forgotten room, you can rest. The library sits at the end of a narrow street that most pedestrians pass without noticing, its entrance recessed between a closed tailor shop and a bakery that opens before dawn. The wooden doors are 12 feet tall and made of oak that has darkened over decades to a color approaching black, with iron handles worn smooth by the hands of those who once entered daily. When you push them open, they move with a weight that suggests they have not been moved in some time, and they close behind you with a sound that feels final but not threatening, simply complete. The entrance hall is small, designed more for transition than for lingering, with a marble floor that shows the path of countless footsteps in a subtle wearing of the stone along the center. Coat hooks line one wall, empty now, their brass fittings tarnished to a color that matches the doors. An umbrella stand holds a single broken umbrella, its ribs exposed like the bones of some small creature, left behind years ago and never claimed. The air immediately changes as the doors seal shut, cooler, drier, carrying the particular scent of aging paper and the faint mineral smell of stone that has not seen sunlight in generations. To the left, a staircase curves upward into darkness, its steps made of the same marble as the floor, with a brass handrail that catches the dim light from the main room ahead. The stairs lead to floors that were once accessible to the public but have been closed for years, their collections now protected behind locked doors that no one remaining has the keys to open. But you do not need to climb. Everything you need is on this first floor, in the great reading room that opens before you as you pass through the final doorway. The reading room occupies the full depth of the building, a space that feels larger inside than the exterior suggests, with ceilings that rise 20 feet to a Corford design of plasterwork that has yellowed slightly but remains intact. The windows that once lined the upper walls have been painted over from the inside, sealing out the city and its changing light, so the room exists in a perpetual twilight that varies only with the seasons and the weather outside. On bright days, a faint glow seeps through the paint, suggesting the presence of the sun without revealing its position. On dark days, the room becomes a cave of shelves, navigable only by the lamps that burn at intervals along the central aisle. The shelves themselves are made of mahogany that has aged to a deep red-brown, built by craftsmen who understood that these structures would need to hold weight for centuries. They stand in rows that create corridors just wide enough for two people to pass, though you will meet no one here. Each shelf is divided into sections by vertical dividers, and each section holds books of roughly similar size, as if the original organizers valued visual order over thematic grouping. The spines face outward, their titles embossed in gold or silver or simple black ink, depending on the era of their binding and the budget of their publisher. At the center of the room, 4 large tables form a square, each surrounded by 6 chairs that do not match perfectly but share a common design language of curved backs and leather seats that have cracked and softened with age. The tables themselves are scarred with use, ink stains, water rings, the occasional carved initials of readers who spent too many hours here and needed to leave some mark of their presence. Lamps sit at the center of each table, their bases made of brass that has been polished by generations of hands, their shades directing light downward onto the surfaces where books were once opened and read. The lamps burn with a consistency that seems impossible given how long this place has been unattended. They are not electric, though wires were installed in the building's later years and remain coiled uselessly in the walls. Instead, they operate on some mechanism that requires no human intervention, a system of weights and springs perhaps, or simply a design that allows a single filling of oil to last far longer than physics should permit. The light they produce is warm, falling in pools of amber that make the surrounding shadows feel protective rather than threatening. The central lamp, largest of the 4, stands on a table that sits slightly apart from the others, positioned to cast its light down the main aisle between the shelves. Its flame, visible through glass panels that have been cleaned by no hand you can identify, dances with a minimal movement that suggests the air in this room is utterly still. When you sit near it, you can feel the warmth on your face, subtle as the breath of someone sleeping nearby, and you can watch the dust that fills the room passing through its beam in patterns that seem almost intentional, as if the air itself is writing something too slow to read. The other 3 lamps burn lower, their flames adjusted by some automatic mechanism to conserve fuel or simply because they were set this way long ago and have never been changed. They create pockets of visibility in the vast darkness of the room, suggesting spaces where reading might still happen if a reader were to appear. But no reader comes. The chairs around these tables remain empty, their leather growing more brittle with each season, their wooden frames settling into the floor with the patient weight of furniture that knows it will not be moved. The books number in the tens of thousands, perhaps more, their spines creating a texture of color that shifts as you move through the room, dark leather bindings giving way to cloth covers in faded reds and greens, then to the uniform white of paper editions from the mid-20th century, then back to older styles as you reach sections that were organized by size rather than subject. Some shelves hold books that have never been opened, their pages still uncut along the top edge, waiting for readers who never arrived. Others show the softening of spines that have been read and returned, until the titles became illegible and the bindings required repair that never came. On the lower shelves, where children might once have reached, the books are larger, illustrated volumes with covers that still hold traces of their original brightness despite the dust. Fairy tales. Natural histories with plates of animals now extinct. Atlases showing countries that have changed their names or their borders or disappeared entirely. These books wait with a particular patience, as if they understand that their readers have grown up and grown old and will not return, but they remain ready anyway, in case someone young enough to wonder might still appear. The upper shelves, accessible only by the rolling ladders that remain attached to their brass tracks, hold smaller books, denser texts, the collected works of authors whose names are familiar but whose readership has passed into history. Philosophy. Theology. Scientific treatises that have been superseded by discoveries made decades after their publication. They rest in their places with the dignity of knowledge that was once urgent and is now simply present, neither wrong nor right, simply existing as a record of what humans once thought they knew. The silence in this room is not absolute. It has texture. You can hear, if you listen carefully, the settling of the building as it responds to temperature changes that penetrate slowly through its thick walls. The creak of wood expanding in summer humidity or contracting in winter dryness. The occasional soft sound of a book's spine cracking further as the glue that holds it continues its slow surrender to time. These are not interruptions. They are the breathing of the place, the small movements that prove it is not dead but simply dormant. Your own sounds become part of this texture. The rustle of your clothing as you shift in the chair. Your breath, which you notice has slowed without your instruction, matching some rhythm that the room seems to require. Your heartbeat, audible in the stillness, a reminder that you are alive and present in a space that will outlast you by centuries if it is allowed to remain. You do not need to be silent. The room absorbs sound without echo, taking your small noises into its vast quiet without returning them. Outside, the city continues. You know this intellectually, though you cannot hear it. The traffic that never stops. The conversations of people who believe their urgency matters. The construction and destruction that characterizes all cities, all the time. But here, that world has been reduced to a theoretical presence, something that exists in the same way that the books on these shelves exist, as information that does not require immediate response. You can let it go. The library holds you here, in this moment, and the outside world can continue without your attention. The chair you have chosen faces the central lamp but is positioned slightly to the side, allowing you to see down the aisle between the shelves without being directly in the light. Its leather seat has been worn to a color that matches the dust in the air, a warm brown that seems to glow with the memory of all the bodies that have rested here. When you sit, it does not creak so much as sigh, accepting your weight with the grace of furniture that has learned not to complain about use. The arms are wide enough to rest your hands comfortably, and you find that your fingers have begun to trace the patterns of wear on the leather without your conscious instruction, the smoothness where elbows have rested, the slight roughness where fingernails have tapped in thought, the deep softness of the seat where the padding has compressed over decades into a shape that fits no one perfectly but accommodates everyone adequately. The wood of the frame is warm against your palms, heated by the lamp nearby and by the accumulated presence of previous sitters. You do not need to read. The chair does not require it. You can simply sit and breathe, and let your eyes move over the spines of books that you will never open, their titles becoming a kind of music without meaning, a rhythm of syllables that lulls rather than informs. The lamp warms your face. The dust continues its slow procession through the light. And the chair holds you with the patience of an object that has learned that human presence is temporary, but the holding is permanent. The dust in this room is not unclean. It is simply present, an accumulation of skin cells and paper fiber and the microscopic debris of a city that seeps in despite every effort to seal it out. It floats in the lamplight in concentrations that vary with the air's movement, thickening in stillness, dispersing when you shift in your chair. Watching it, you become aware of your own breathing, the small currents you create with each exhalation, the way your presence disturbs this environment in ways too subtle to measure but too real to deny. The dust has settled on every surface in layers that record time in their thickness. On the tables, it can be disturbed by a finger, revealing the darker wood beneath in patterns that will remain until more dust falls to soften their edges. On the shelves, it protects the books from the small damages of light and air, creating a seal that has preserved these volumes better than any archival intention might have. On the floor, it has been worn away along the paths that readers once walked, creating ghostly trails that show where traffic was heaviest and where, in the farthest corners, no foot has stepped in years. You are breathing this dust. It enters your lungs with each inhalation, becoming part of you in a way that feels ancient and inevitable. The readers who sat here before you breathed it too, and their cells remain in it, as yours will remain after you leave, settling slowly onto the surfaces they once disturbed. This is not morbid. It is simply continuity, the way this place holds all its visitors long after they have gone, incorporating them into its substance, making them part of the silence. The clock stands in the corner farthest from the door, a tall case of dark wood with a face that shows Roman numerals and hands that move with a deliberation that seems almost reluctant. It does not tick every second. The mechanism, wound by some long-absent hand to a tension that has lasted years, releases its energy in intervals that vary with the temperature and the humidity, so that time here is measured in approximations rather than certainties. You might count to 3 between ticks, or 4, or 5 if the air is particularly still. The sound it makes is not sharp. It is soft, a deep note that seems to come from the wood itself rather than from any metal mechanism, felt in the chest more than heard in the ears. When it strikes the hour, the chimes are similarly muted, as if the clock has learned that loudness is inappropriate in this space. You may hear 3 chimes, or 4, or 5, and lose count before you determine which hour is being marked. It does not matter. The clock keeps time because that is what clocks do, not because anyone here needs to know what time it is. You begin to wait for the ticks, noticing the stretch of silence between them, anticipating the soft sound that confirms time is still passing. But the waiting does not create anxiety. Instead, it becomes a kind of meditation, a focus on the present moment that requires no effort to maintain. The clock will tick again. You do not need to will it. You do not need to worry that it has stopped. You can simply exist in the interval, suspended between one moment and the next, as the dust floats and the lamp burns and the chair holds you in its patient embrace. Between the rows of shelves, the darkness thickens. The lamps do not reach here, and the painted windows admit no light, so the farthest corners of the room exist in a permanent night that has lasted since the last reader turned off the final lamp and closed the heavy doors behind them. You do not need to enter these spaces. The chair is sufficient. The central lamp is sufficient. But you are aware of them, these corridors of shadow that extend beyond the reach of vision, filled with books that have not been touched in decades and will not be touched again. The air is cooler here, sinking as it does in all large rooms to the lowest points, creating currents that move without sound along the floor and up the walls in patterns that meteorologists could map, but that serve no purpose except to remind you that even in stillness, there is movement. If you were to walk these aisles, you would need to move slowly, feeling your way along the shelves, reading titles by touch rather than sight. But you do not walk. You sit. The deep shelves remain unexplored, their contents unknown, their presence enough to suggest that this room contains more than any single visit could reveal. This is the nature of libraries. They are inexhaustible. Even a library this size, modest compared to the great collections of the world, contains more than one lifetime could consume. And this knowledge, rather than creating urgency, creates its opposite, a permission to stop, to rest, to accept that you will never know what those dark shelves hold, and that not knowing is acceptable. The books do not mind. They have waited this long. They can wait longer. Your eyes have closed. Or they have not, and the room has simply blurred into a softness that requires no focus. The lamp still burns, but you no longer see it directly, only the amber glow that penetrates your eyelids or your unfocused gaze, creating patterns that shift and dissolve without meaning. The chair continues to hold you. The clock continues its slow measurement. The dust continues to fall through light that no longer registers as separate from the darkness. You do not remember deciding to sleep. There was no moment of surrender, no conscious release of wakefulness. There was only the gradual slowing of thought, the lengthening of the intervals between one idea and the next, until the ideas themselves became indistinguishable from the silence that surrounded them. The library entered you, or you entered the library, or the distinction between inside and outside lost its meaning in the way that all distinctions lose meaning as sleep approaches. The books on the shelves hold their places. The dust settles on your shoulders, adding you to the layers that cover everything here. The clock ticks, or does not tick, and the interval between its sounds has become too long to measure. You are breathing slowly now, so slowly that each breath seems to last minutes, hours, the entire span of the library's existence. And in this breathing, you are not separate from the room, from the books, from the silence that has held this space open for your arrival. Sleep now. The library keeps its own time. The lamp will burn. The chair will hold. And when you wake, if you wake, the room will be here, unchanged, patient, continuing its existence as if your presence had been only a brief addition to its long accumulation of moments. You do not need to remember this. You do not need to hold on to any of it. Simply sleep, as the dust falls, as the clock measures, as the books wait in their places for readers who will not come. The city outside has changed in ways you will not know. Morning has come, or evening, or another day has passed. Without your participation. But here, in this room, that time has forgotten. You have found what you needed. The chair holds you still. The lamp burns. And the books on their shelves continue to be present. Without demanding anything. You can stay asleep. You can drift deeper. The library does not need you to wake. It was here before you arrived. It will remain when you are gone. Sleep now. Let the silence hold you. As this chair holds you. As these walls hold the silence. As the dust holds the light. That falls without hurry. Through the stillness of the abandoned library. Everything that needs to continue already is.